Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to put on our detective hats to unravel one of the greatest and, frankly, most mind-bending mysteries in all of physics: the strange, seemingly arbitrary numbers that perfectly govern our entire universe. We're going to explore a phenomenon that has completely reshaped how physicists view the fundamental laws of nature. And honestly, by the end of this, you might just look up at the night sky a little differently. So let's just jump right into it with this staggering observation from the late, great Stephen Hawking. He lays out the massive stakes of our investigation today, basically stating that our laws of nature are extremely fine-tuned, and changing them even slightly destroys the possibility of life. Just pause and think about the sheer weight of that statement. It literally means our existence hangs on a razor's edge. But what exactly does that mean in practical terms? Section 1. The Cosmic Mystery, Fine-Tuning Explained. To actually understand what Hawking meant, we first need to clearly define the core concept sitting at the heart of this cosmic mystery. Here's the crucial thing. The numbers that govern physics, they aren't just arbitrary. They fall into a shockingly specific, incredibly narrow range. See, for decades, while searching for a unified theory of everything, scientists realized that constants, those fixed numerical values you see in complex physics equations, could theoretically take on absolutely any value. There's no underlying mathematical law saying they must be what they are. And yet they don't take on just any value. They sit precisely, immovably, exactly where they need to be to yield a complex universe. Think about the difference here. If you randomly change these fixed numbers, sure, fundamental physics might theoretically still work just fine, but you'd be left with a completely sterile, empty void. You'd just have basic, featureless particles aimlessly bouncing around forever in the dark. There'd be zero structure. But because we happen to have perfectly tuned constants, reality is entirely different. That precise tuning gives us chemistry, atoms, molecules, burning stars, sprawling galaxies, and ultimately, us, biological life. Moving on to Section 2, turning the dials, testing the constants. To really wrap our heads around how delicate this balance is, let's visualize how physicists actually go about testing these strange numbers. I want you to imagine a massive cosmic control board. Now, think of every single fundamental constant as being controlled by a tiny little dial. Each dial sets the exact value of a fundamental force, or maybe the specific mass of a particle. In their mathematical models, physicists can theoretically turn these dials up or down to see what would happen if the universe were built just a little bit differently. And what they've discovered is absolutely astonishing. Every single dial happens to be perfectly set. They're finely tuned to the exact, precise fractions required to allow all of the beautiful order and structure in our universe to emerge. Now, this realization didn't just pop up overnight. It's actually a super fascinating progression of human discovery. It all started as a theoretical proposition by astrophysicist Brandon Carter back in 1974. Then, building on that foundation, in 1986, Barrow and Tipler published this landmark book detailing the severe constraints of these constants. But things really locked into place in 1998. That's when cosmologists actually measured the extraordinarily fine-tuned value of something called the cosmological constant. Suddenly, this went from a neat theoretical musing to a widely accepted, meticulously measured physical fact. Which brings us to Section 3, 3 delicate numbers testing the suspects. What's really fascinating here is that we can actually look at 3 specific dials in our cosmic mystery. We're going to walk right up to them, give them a theoretical twist, and see exactly what happens. Okay, suspect number 1, the mass of the electron. Right now, in our universe, an electron is incredibly light compared to a proton. A proton is actually about 1,836 times heavier. And because of this beautifully specific size difference, electrons happily orbit protons to form stable atoms. But what if we turn the dial and make the tiny electron just 2.5 times bigger? Absolute disaster. It would crash into the proton, completely annihilating into a neutron. The entire universe would just be made of dense, lifeless neutrons. No atoms of any kind would ever form. All right, our second suspect is the fine structure constant, which basically controls the strength of the electric force between charged particles. Physicist Leonard Susskind perfectly captures the catastrophic implications of tweaking this particular dial. He notes, with a bit of dark existential humor, that if it were slightly bigger, there would be no one to ask the question. And here is exactly why that would happen. Right now, the dial is perfectly set at 1/137. At this exact value, atomic nuclei are beautifully stable. Things hold together perfectly. But if we push that dial up to 1, the electrical force between protons, which remember, all have a positive charge, would become way too strong. They'd violently repel each other. the core of every single atom in the universe would literally fly apart. So again, no chemistry, no stars, no us. Our final piece of evidence? It's honestly probably the most mind-blowing of them all, the cosmological constant. It comes from Einstein's theory of general relativity and dictates the expansion of space itself. For our universe to exist as we know it, scientists realize this dial cannot exceed a staggeringly tiny margin of 10 to the power of negative 120. Now, I know hearing that number might just sound like abstract math jargon, but the physical implications of this tiny margin are absolutely massive. Think of it like this. If we were to turn this dial so it's even slightly more positive, space would expand way too fast. Matter would be aggressively thrown apart before gravity could ever pull it together to form galaxies, stars, or planets. On the flip side, if we turn the dial slightly negative, the entire universe would immediately collapse in on itself into a massive black hole right at the very beginning of time. Basically, everything has to balance perfectly on the edge of a knife. Remember that 1998 date from earlier? That is when cosmologists actually managed to measure this constant. It came out to about 3 times 10 to the negative 122. That's a decimal point, followed by literally 121 zeros and then a 3. Just sit with that for a second. If it had even 119 zeros, we wouldn't be here. It's an almost unimaginable margin of error. The sheer level of precision required for us to exist is completely beyond human comprehension. Section 4, the coincidence problem. Is it just dumb luck? Honestly, at this point in the explainer, you're probably asking yourself a very logical question. Couldn't all of these perfectly tuned dials just be an incredibly lucky coincidence? Just a totally random roll of the cosmic dice? Well, let's investigate that. To tackle this dumb luck defense, there's a really brilliant analogy from the source material. Think of coincidences like bumping into someone you know in a crowded New York Penn station. It definitely feels lucky, but given how many people you know and how many thousands of people move through that station every hour, it's actually highly probable. Now contrast that with bumping into your absolute only friend in the middle of the desolate, empty Sahara Desert. That isn't just a simple coincidence. The odds are so astronomically low that it demands a real explanation. And we can literally do the math on this kind of luck. Get this. The estimated number of total particles in the entire observable universe is 10 to the 85th power. That is every single proton, neutron, and electron in existence. Yet the precision required for just the cosmological constant alone is 10 to the 120th power. That is an extra 35 zeros of pure unlikelihood. When the required precision for just one number completely dwarfs the total number of particles in the entire universe, luck is mathematically eliminated as a suspect. I really want to make sure this is crystal clear, guys. This isn't just some fringe internet theory. The consensus on fine-tuning is virtually unanimous among top scientists. Physicists from completely different philosophical backgrounds, both atheists and theists, completely agree that this specialness is real and cries out for a legitimate explanation. Plus, as our physical knowledge of the universe has increased over the decades, the degree of known fine-tuning has only gone up. Basically, the more we learn, the more remarkably precise the dials seem to be. Finally, Section 5, the ultimate question. What does it all mean? This brings our whole cosmic detective story to a massive conceptual crossroads. The incredibly robust evidence of fine-tuning has fundamentally fractured modern science and forces us to rethink, well, everything. We've got to start with what we definitively know. The absolutely undeniable takeaway we can draw from the source material is anchored right here. Our universe is fundamentally tuned for complexity. It's not necessarily just about intelligent life. It's about the staggering fact that the baseline laws of physics perfectly allow for atoms, planets, galaxies, and eventually biology to exist at all. But what does that actually mean for our deepest understanding of reality? To solve this incredible mystery, the scientific community is basically split between two major paradigms right now. One is the multiverse. This is the idea that there is an infinite number of unobservable, randomly generated universes. If you have infinite universes, eventually every possible random dial setting happens purely by chance. And hey, we just happen to live in the lucky one that supports life. The other paradigm is the theory of an intelligent cause. This posits that a purposeful designer perfectly set the dials of our single universe to intentionally allow for complexity and life to flourish. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with the ultimate question to ponder. You've seen the evidence of the cosmic dials, the mind-boggling mathematics, and the absolute physical necessity of these perfectly balanced numbers.
When you look at the finely tuned constants of our cosmos, which of these two incredible realities do you think makes the most sense? A vast infinite multiverse or a purposeful, intelligent cause? Think about it and keep exploring.